Welcome to Inside PTI. On this episode, we're going to talk about corn planting depth. And I guess I'm going to pose a couple questions today. One is going to be, does planting depth matter? What happens if you plant too shallow? What happens if you plant too deep? The more important question I'm going to ask is, if the moisture line changes in the field, should we be changing planting depth to make sure seed is being planted into that moisture line? And if the answer to that question is yes, how in the world are we going to do that in the field? How are we going to implement it? Well, how do you change depth on the planter now? Well, we've got a T-handle on the back side of the planter, and we can grab that T-handle, we can move it up to plant shallower, and we can move it down to plant deeper. But it's been a manual, fixed setting in the past. And we've used this T-handle to put planting depth plots in. Here's 2020 data from this past year where we plant really shallow at 1 inch. And then I go deeper all the way up to 3.5 inches in depth, and we monitor which was the best planting depth this year in the conditions that we had. And this year, the 2-inch planting depth was in fact the best. Let's talk about some yield loss though. As we went shallow to 1 inch, we lost over 37 bushel to the acre. Why would that be? Well, planting 1 inch deep, we're just planting into dry moisture, planting into dry dirt. As we go deeper to 3.5 inches, it was in fact too deep, and we lost 10 bushel to the acre. So how do we know what the perfect planting depth is going to be? Because right now it just feels like we're guessing a little bit and we really don't know where that perfect depth is. Now we're monitoring moisture line, and the data you see on the screen right now is data represented from a research product we have at Precision Planting called Smart Knife. And this Smart Knife can measure soil moisture throughout the soil profile. And right now, the data shows the moisture at 1.25 inches. That's just completely dry dirt. And you would not want to plant into this dry dirt because you would not have enough moisture to get that seed up out of the ground. That's at 1.25 inches though. Let's go deeper. I'm going to turn this video on and I'm going to hit play, and you're going to see the amount of red on the screen disappear because that represents the amount of dry dirt that's disappearing, and we're getting more moisture as we go deeper in the soil. We're going to go deeper all the way to 2.75 inches, and look at the amount of green we have on this map that indicates that we've got good soil moisture. So I showed you this, I went through this scenario to show you that in some fields, moisture line is changing. We may have dry dirt at shallower levels, and as we go deeper, we can get to the moisture line. If we plant seed into dry dirt, we're not going to get even emergence, and we're going to lose yield. So what we're trying to do is figure out where the moisture line is at and just plant to that moisture line, no deeper. How are we doing that? Well, we're using Smart Firmer on the planter as we are planting. Smart Firmer is a Keaton seed firmer with some electronics on it that does have the ability to measure soil moisture, furrow moisture. And we're going to get that moisture reading of the furrow in real time reported to us in the cab of the tractor on the 2020, and it's going to tell us where we're planting corn. Okay, where we're planting our crop, do we have enough moisture to get that crop up out of the ground effectively? Let's go back to my planting depth study that we talked about before, where 2 inches was my best planting depth. Why? Well, at 2 inches, I had furrow moisture readings from my Smart Firmer of 32.8. We think that we need to be somewhere near that 33% furrow moisture value to have enough moisture to get this crop up effectively. We were at 32.8, real close to that 33% level. Look what happens when we go down to shallow plantings of 1 inch. I told you before, we lost over 36, 37 bushel to the acre. Why? Because we were planting in dry dirt. How dry was it? 19.1% furrow moisture. What should that number be? 33%. Look what happens as we go deeper. We went to 3.5 inches, and really from 2.5 to 3.5, I've got good furrow moisture, 34.5 to 35.8. And that tells me as a farmer, why do I need to plant deeper when I've got adequate furrow moisture? Those are the things we're questioning. Those are the things we're asking ourselves as we're planting, and we're coming up with some really good answers to these questions, and we're doing a better job of planting as a result. How do we do this? Locating the moisture with Smart Firmer, how do we change the depth then? Well, we're getting rid of the T-handle on the planter. We're going to a product called Smart Depth. This is an electric motor that replaces the T-handle. We remove that T-handle completely. We go to Smart Depth, and this electric motor can do the same thing as a T-handle, but from the cab of the tractor, we can move our planting depth shallower or deeper. We can do it manually, or we can do it automatically based on Smart Firmer readings in the furrow. This is interesting to me because the first time I ever used this in the field, I go to the 2020 and And I've got a depth button on the monitor now. I got a monitor system that tells me how deep I'm planting corn, and that was very reassuring. It also shows me the depth of every row as I'm planting through the field. Again, that is assurance that if you want to plant 2-inch depth corn, we're getting 2-inch on every single row of the planter. What I'm wanting to do now is we take our planters into the field at the PTI farm. I'm wanting to use Smart Firmer to show me where furrow moisture is at, and then I'm going to move my planting depth to that moisture line in an automation mode. When we did that this past year, I felt pretty excited about this data. 2 inches was my best fixed planting depth. When I went into total automation, Smart Firmer, you tell me how much furrow moisture I have, and then Smart Depth, we're gonna move planting depth to that moisture line at 33%. And when I did that this spring in 2020, that automation mode out-yielded that fixed planting depth of 2 inches. That's what it's all about. That's what we're wanting to go to. Measure, react, and take control. It's all about taking control. How much control do you have in farming today? This is one avenue where we can measure that furrow moisture, react, and move planting depth to make sure every seed is planted into moisture. We can set up boundaries on the 2020. We can set our shallowest planting depth that you feel comfortable with. You can edit that. You can put that into the 2020 very easily. And then at the same token, you can tell it, I'm not going to plant any deeper than this depth. And then Smart Depth will stay in that boundary based on Smart Firmer readings. So today's Inside PTI agronomy tip of the day is, no matter what crop we are planting, all seeds need to be planted into moisture. In the past, we've never had a button on the monitor that told me how deep I was planting, nor did it tell me if I was planting into moisture. Finally, we have that technology. We have a measurement system that can sense how much furrow moisture we have, and then we can even adjust planting depth accordingly. Having the ability to measure, react, and take control while planting is changing the game. And we did it this year at PTI. We're going to continue to test this and show growers the importance of furrow moisture in planting depth. If you've got any questions about anything we've talked about today, you can reach out to us and ask questions in one of two ways. One, talk to any Precision Planting Premier dealer. They'd love to talk to you about this. Or you can send us an email at InsidePTI@precisionplanting.com. That's all the time we have for today. We will see you on the next episode of Inside PTI. Thanks for watching.